The metal door slid open with a soft hiss. Commander HFY walked into the bright white room, his forearms moving stiffly at his sides. The old Calorian soldier looked tired. His blue shell had many scars from old battles. Some were thin white lines. Others were deep marks that never healed properly. 12 young cadets sat around a large table. They came from different planets and looked very different from each other. There was a Trithan with silver scales that caught the light. A Valerian with soft purple skin sat next to a Gorvan whose rocky hide made small clicking sounds when he moved. All of them wore the same dark blue uniforms of the Galactic War Academy. HFY sat down slowly in the chair across from them. His large black eyes looked at each cadet one by one. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air system. "You are here to learn about humans," HFY said. His voice was deep and rough. The translator device on his chest turned his clicking sounds into words the cadets could understand. "I was told to teach you about their military." A young Trithan cadet raised her hand. Her name tag said Sela. "Commander, we have read the basic files. Humans seem like many other species. They use projectile weapons and chemical explosives. They are not very advanced." HFY's mandibles clicked together. This was how Calorians laughed, but it did not sound happy. "Not very advanced," he repeated slowly. "Is that what the files say?" The cadets nodded. Another one spoke up. This was Kren, a Valerian with bright purple eyes. "The reports say humans have only had space travel for about 200 years. Most species need at least 1,000 years to become good at war." "Good at war," HFY said. He was quiet for a long moment. His 4 hands rested on the table, but they were shaking slightly. "Tell me, cadets, what do you think makes a species good at war?" Drak the Gorvan cadet answered first. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Superior weapons, better armor, faster ships, more soldiers. Good tactics," added Sela, "and smart planning, knowing when to attack and when to retreat." "Strong leadership," said another cadet. HFY nodded slowly at each answer. "All correct. These things do matter in war. I have fought in 47 different conflicts across the galaxy. I have seen weapons that can destroy entire moons. I have watched fleets with millions of ships. I have served under generals who could plan battles that lasted for decades." He paused and looked out the small window. Beyond the glass, stars filled the dark space. Many of those stars had planets where HFY had fought. "But none of that prepared me for humans," he continued. "When I first received my assignment to observe them, I thought it would be easy. The Galactic Federation always studies new species before letting them join. It is normal procedure." The cadets leaned forward. This was why they were here. Very few beings had direct contact with humans during their integration period. Most of what they knew came from official reports that did not say much. "I was chosen because of my experience," HFY explained. "The Council thought that someone who had seen many different types of warfare would be able to assess human military capabilities quickly. They wanted to know if humans could be useful as soldiers for the Federation." "What did you find?" asked Kren. HFY was quiet for a long time. His eyes seemed to be looking at something far away. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "At first, exactly what you would expect. Humans had been fighting wars on their planet for thousands of years, but their weapons were simple. They used metal projectiles fired from tubes. They had vehicles that moved on wheels or tracks. Their ships could barely travel between stars." He stood up and walked to the window. His reflection showed in the glass, an old soldier who had seen too much. "I watched their military exercises from orbit. Everything seemed normal. They had armies divided into groups. They had officers who gave orders and soldiers who followed them. They had strategies and tactics that made sense. But something was different?" Sela asked. "Not different," HFY said. "Wrong. I was watching everything wrong." He turned back to face the cadets. "I was looking at their weapons and their ships and their numbers. But I was not looking at them." The room was very quiet now. Even the air system seemed softer. "Humans do something that no other species does," HFY continued. "When they fight, they follow rules." Drak made a confused rumbling sound. "All militaries have rules, Commander. Chain of command, battle formations, supply procedures." "No," HFY said quickly. "Not those kinds of rules. Humans have rules about who they can kill and who they cannot kill. They have rules about how to treat prisoners. They have rules about protecting civilians even when those civilians belong to their enemies." The cadets looked at each other. This did sound strange. "But Commander?" said a small cadet from the back. Her name was Yira, and she was from a species that looked like large insects. Rules like that would make fighting much harder. Why would any species choose to make war more difficult for themselves? Zeftai's mandibles clicked again, but this time it sounded sad. That is exactly what I thought. I wrote in my reports that humans were inefficient fighters. They wasted time and resources protecting people who could not help them win. They let enemy soldiers live when they could have killed them. They even provided medical care to wounded enemies. He sat back down heavily. I recommended that the Federation classify humans as a support species. Good for logistics and medical work, but not suitable for serious combat. What changed your mind? Asked Kren. Zeftai looked down at his hands. They were shaking more now. The Drakmari changed my mind. Several cadets recognized the name. The Drakmari had been a powerful species that enslaved other races. They had been destroyed about 50 years ago, but most people did not know exactly how it happened. The Drakmari were slavers, Zeftai explained. They would attack weaker species and take their people to sell in other parts of the galaxy. They had been doing this for thousands of years. The Federation knew about them but could never gather enough evidence to act officially. What does this have to do with humans? Asked Drak. The Drakmari made a mistake, Zeftai said. His voice was getting quieter. They attacked a human colony called New Perth. 50,000 people lived there. Men, women, children, elderly. The Drakmari thought it would be easy. Humans were new to space. They did not have big fleets or powerful weapons. Zeftai stood up again. He walked to the other side of the room. I was there when the distress signal reached human command. I was observing their military headquarters as part of my assignment. When they received the message that New Perth was under attack, something changed. Changed how? Sila asked. The humans got very quiet, Zeftai said. Not scared quiet. Not confused quiet. Quiet like a predator that has just spotted its prey. He turned to face the cadets again. His large black eyes reflected the ceiling lights. Within 6 hours, every human military ship within 3 sectors was moving toward Drakmari space. Not just military ships, civilian ships too. Cargo vessels, passenger transports, even small personal craft. All of them heading to the same place. That sounds like panic, said Yura. No, Zeftai said firmly. It was not panic. It was purpose. I had never seen anything like it. When most species are attacked, they defend. They try to protect what they have. But humans decided to end the threat completely. The room was completely silent now. The cadets could tell that something important was coming. I requested permission to accompany the human fleet. Zeftai continued. I told my superiors that this would be a good chance to observe human combat capabilities in a real situation. They agreed. He walked back to his chair but did not sit down. I thought I was going to watch a rescue mission, he said. I had no idea I was about to witness the birth of a new kind of warfare. Zeftai moved to the wall display and pressed a control. A star map appeared showing the sector where New Perth had been located. Red dots marked Drakmari ships. Blue dots showed human vessels converging from all directions. I was assigned to the human flagship, Zeftai said. A ship called the Resilient. The captain was a human female named Chen. Admiral Chen, they called her. He paused and looked at the map. When I first met Admiral Chen, I was surprised. She was small, even for a human. She had gray hair and lines around her eyes that showed her age. Among my people, only the strongest and largest become military leaders, but humans choose differently. The cadets watched as Zeftai traced the movement of ships on the display. Admiral Chen welcomed me aboard her ship. She said I could observe everything and ask any questions I wanted. This confused me. Most species hide their military secrets from outsiders. Why did she let you watch? Asked Sila. I asked her that same question, Zeftai replied. She said that humans had nothing to hide. She said that what they were about to do, they wanted the whole galaxy to see. Zeftai pressed another control. The map changed to show the inside of a human warship. It looked different from other species' ships. Instead of being built for intimidation or comfort, everything looked practical and efficient. The journey to Drakmari space took 3 days, Zeftai continued. I spent that time watching the humans prepare. What I saw made no sense to me. He walked closer to the cadets. In my experience, soldiers preparing for battle become aggressive. They shout and make themselves angry. They perform ceremonies to invoke their warrior spirits. They compete with each other to show who is strongest. What did the humans do? Asked Kren. They were quiet, Zeftai said. They cleaned their weapons carefully. They checked their equipment multiple times. They wrote messages to their families back home. Some of them read books. Others played games or listened to music. Drock made his grinding sound of confusion. That does not sound like warriors preparing for battle. That is what I thought too, Zeftai agreed. I reported to my superiors that human military discipline was poor. They seemed too relaxed for soldiers about to fight a dangerous enemy. Zeftai returned to the star map. On the second day, I asked Admiral Chen about this. I told her that her soldiers did not seem ready for combat.
Do you know what she said?
The cadets shook their heads. She said that her soldiers were not getting ready to fight. They were getting ready to work. Zeftai's voice became thoughtful. I did not understand what she meant at the time. He pressed the controls again. Now the map showed the Drakmari system. It had several planets and many space stations. Admiral Chen invited me to attend the planning meetings, Zeftai said. Human military leaders gathered around tables covered with charts and data screens. They talked about the mission in detail. What kind of plans did they make? Asked Yira. That was the strangest part, Zeftai replied. Most of their planning was not about how to attack the Drakmari. It was about how to save the prisoners. He pointed to different locations on the map. The Drakmari had taken the humans from New Perth to processing stations throughout their system. The prisoners were being prepared for sale to different buyers across the galaxy. Processing stations? Scylla asked. Zeftai's mandibles clicked sadly. Places where slaves are sorted, categorized, and prepared for transport. The Drakmari had been using these stations for centuries. They were heavily defended because they contained the most valuable part of the Drakmari economy. The old commander moved away from the display. Human intelligence had located 17 different stations where New Perth prisoners might be held. Each station was protected by armed guards and defensive systems. Getting to the prisoners would be very difficult. How did they plan to do it? Asked Kren. They divided their forces into 17 groups, Zeftai explained. Each group would attack a different station at exactly the same time. This would prevent the Drakmari from moving prisoners or calling for help. Drock rumbled thoughtfully. That makes sense tactically. But it would spread their forces very thin. Each group would be badly outnumbered. Exactly, Zeftai said. I pointed this out to Admiral Chen. I told her that this plan was very risky. Her forces would be fighting at a severe disadvantage in every location. What did she say? She looked at me with those strange human eyes, Zeftai replied. She said that the risk to her soldiers was acceptable. The risk to the prisoners was not. Zeftai sat down heavily. This made no military sense to me. In war, you protect your own forces first. You only take risks when the potential gain is worth more than the potential loss. But Admiral Chen was talking about risking trained soldiers to save civilians who were already captured. The room was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. On the third day, we reached the edge of Drakmari space, Zeftai continued. The human fleet spread out to their assigned positions. I stayed on the bridge with Admiral Chen to observe the battle. He stood up and walked to the window again. Just before the attack began, Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to all the ships in the fleet. She wanted to speak to every human soldier before they went into battle. What did she tell them? Asked Scylla. Zeftai was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. She told them that 50,000 innocent people were counting on them. She said that what they did in the next few hours would determine whether those people lived or died. That sounds like a normal military speech, said Yira. It was what she said next that surprised me, Zeftai replied. She told her soldiers that she understood the mission was dangerous. She said that some of them might not return home. Then she said that if anyone wanted to withdraw from the mission, they could do so without shame or punishment. The cadets looked at each other in surprise. She gave them a choice? Asked Kren. Yes, Zeftai said. A choice to fight or not fight. I had never heard of a military leader doing such a thing before battle. Did anyone withdraw? Asked Drock. Zeftai's mandibles clicked again. Not one soldier. Not one ship. Every human in the fleet volunteered to continue the mission. He returned to the star map display. Admiral Chen closed the communication channel and gave the order to begin the attack. That was when I realized that everything I thought I knew about warfare was wrong. Zeftai pressed a control and the map showed ships moving toward their targets. The human attack began at exactly the same moment across all 17 locations. But this was not like any battle I had ever seen. How was it different? Asked Scylla. Human ships did not try to destroy the Drakmari vessels, Zeftai explained. Instead, they focused on disabling them. They targeted engines and weapon systems, not life support or crew quarters. Why would they do that? Asked Yira. Destroying enemy ships is faster and safer. I asked Admiral Chen the same question, Zeftai replied. She said that many Drakmari ships had prisoners aboard. Destroying the ships would kill the people they were trying to save. Zeftai moved closer to the cadets. Do you understand what this means? Human soldiers were making their own mission more dangerous in order to protect their enemies' lives. The cadets looked confused. This did not sound like any military strategy they had learned about. The battle was chaos, Zeftai continued. Human ships were outnumbered at every location. Drakmari forces fought back with everything they had, but the humans kept advancing even when their ships were badly damaged. He paused and looked at each cadet. I watched human vessels continue fighting even after their weapons stopped working. I saw ships with hull breaches and failing life support still pushing forward to their objectives. Were they winning? Asked Kren. Zeftai made a sound that might have been a laugh. Winning and losing are simple concepts. What the humans were doing was something else entirely. They were succeeding. What is the difference? Winning means defeating your enemy, Zeftai explained. Succeeding means achieving your goal. The human goal was not to defeat the Drakmari. It was to save the prisoners. He pressed the controls again and the map zoomed in on one of the processing stations. This is where I began to understand what Admiral Chen meant when she said her soldiers were getting ready to work. Zeftai's hands began to shake as he continued the story. He gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. The assault on Processing Station 7 was where everything changed for me, he said. Admiral Chen allowed me to monitor the communications from the ground teams. I could hear everything that happened. He activated another display showing the layout of a Drakmari facility. It looked like a fortress with thick walls and multiple defensive positions. The station was built into an asteroid, Zeftai explained. Multiple levels underground, each one more secure than the last. The prisoners were kept in the deepest sections, far from any possible rescue attempt. How did the humans plan to reach them? Asked Sela. They did not plan, Zeftai said. They adapted. The cadets looked confused. What do you mean? Asked Kren. Zeftai moved to show different sections of the facility. Human doctrine is different from what other species use. Most militaries create detailed plans and follow them exactly. If the plan fails, the mission fails. That is how we are taught to fight, agreed Drak. Humans make plans too, Zeftai continued, but they also train their soldiers to think independently. When a plan stops working, human soldiers create new plans on their own. He pointed to the outer defenses of the station. The first human assault team landed here outside the main entrance. Drakmari defenders had heavy weapons positioned to cover all approaches. A conventional attack would have been suicide. What did they do instead? They did not attack, Zeftai said. They talked. The cadets looked at each other in surprise. Talked? Asked Yira. The human team leader opened a communication channel to the Drakmari commander inside the station. Zeftai explained. I listened to the entire conversation through Admiral Chen's command system. Zeftai closed his eyes for a moment, as if remembering something difficult. The human leader identified himself as Lieutenant Colonel Morrison. He told the Drakmari commander that he was there to retrieve stolen human civilians. What did the Drakmari say? The Drakmari commander laughed, Zeftai replied. He said that the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. He offered to let them leave if they departed immediately. Did they leave? Lieutenant Colonel Morrison was quiet for a moment. Zeftai said. Then he said something I will never forget. He said, I appreciate your offer, but I cannot accept it. I have 57 people in there who are counting on me to bring them home. I will not leave without them. Zeftai opened his eyes and looked at the cadets. The Drakmari commander asked Morrison if he was willing to die for these civilians. Morrison said yes, but he hoped it would not be necessary. Then what happened? Morrison made a counteroffer, Zeftai continued. He said that if the Drakmari released all the prisoners immediately, the humans would allow the Drakmari to leave peacefully. Drak made his grinding laugh. That is ridiculous. The Drakmari had all the advantages. Why would they surrender? That is exactly what the Drakmari commander said, Zeftai agreed. He told Morrison that humans were clearly insane if they thought they could make demands from a position of weakness. Zeftai walked around the table, his forearms moving restlessly. Morrison was quiet again. Then he said, "Sir, I do not think you understand the situation. This is not a demand. This is a notification. Those people in your facility are coming home with us today. The only question is how many of your people die before that happens." The room was completely silent. The cadets could hear their own breathing. The Drakmari commander cut off the communication. Zeftai continued. A few minutes later, the station's weapons opened fire on the human positions. So the battle began? Yes, but not the way anyone expected, Zeftai said. He activated a tactical display showing the movements of both forces. The humans did not try to storm the main entrance. Instead, they spread out around the entire asteroid. They were looking for another way in. They were making their own way in, Zeftai corrected. Human engineers began drilling holes through the asteroid's surface. Not large holes, just big enough for one person to crawl through. Yira made a confused clicking sound. That would take too long. The defenders could just wait for them to break through and shoot them as they emerged. That is what the Drakmari thought too, Zeftai said. But humans think differently about time. He showed the cadets a timeline of the battle. While the engineers were drilling, other human teams were doing something else. They were jamming all communications in and out of the station. Standard siege tactics, noted Kren. But they were also broadcasting messages, Zeftai continued. Messages to any Drakmari ships in the area, telling them exactly what was happening at Processing Station 7. Why would they do that? Asked Sila. That would bring enemy reinforcements. Zeftai's mandibles clicked grimly. The messages were not calls for help. They were warnings. The humans were telling other Drakmari forces to stay away if they wanted to live. The cadets exchanged worried looks. This was not sounding like a rescue mission anymore. After 2 hours of drilling, the human engineers broke through into the upper levels of the station. Zeftai continued. But they did not send soldiers through the holes immediately. What did they do? They sent messages, Zeftai said. They dropped communication devices through the holes and started talking to people inside the station. He pressed a control, and audio began playing from the old recording. The cadets heard human voices speaking in calm, professional tones. "Attention all prisoners in Processing Station 7. This is the Human Rescue Force. We are here to take you home. Please remain calm and follow any instructions given by our personnel." Another human voice came through the speakers. "Attention Drakmari personnel. You are now surrounded by human military forces. We are here to retrieve our people. Any Drakmari who assists in their safe return will be treated as a non-combatant. Any Drakmari who harms prisoners will be treated as a war criminal." Zeftai stopped the recording. "Do you understand what they were doing?" He asked the cadets. "They were trying to avoid a fight?" suggested Yira. "No," Zeftai said. "They were making the fight unfair." The cadets looked confused again. "Think about it," Zeftai explained. The Drakmari defenders knew that human soldiers were about to enter their facility. But they also knew that those same soldiers were promising to protect any Drakmari who helped them. That would cause confusion among the defenders, said Kren thoughtfully. Exactly, Zeftai agreed. Some Drakmari would want to fight. Others would want to surrender. Still others would want to flee. The human messages created doubt and division among their enemies. He activated the tactical display again. When the first human soldiers finally entered the station, they moved in small groups. Each group had a specific objective: find prisoners, secure escape routes, or neutralize threats. How could they coordinate all of this without detailed planning? Asked Drak. Because every human soldier understood the mission, Zeftai replied. Get the prisoners out safely. Everything else was secondary. The display showed human teams moving through the station's corridors. I watched through their helmet cameras as they encountered Drakmari defenders. What I saw made no sense according to conventional military thinking. What did you see? Zeftai was quiet for a moment. Human soldiers who had been shot continued fighting. Soldiers who were outnumbered charged enemy positions. Soldiers who found wounded enemies stopped to give them medical aid. They helped wounded enemies? Asked Sila in surprise. Yes, Zeftai said. Even while the battle was still happening. I watched a human medic treat a Drakmari guard who had been injured by falling debris. The medic's own arm was bleeding, but he bandaged the Drakmari first. Yira made her clicking sound of confusion. Why would they do that? The injured enemy could not help them rescue the prisoners. I asked Admiral Chen the same question, Zeftai replied. She said that helping wounded enemies was not about tactical advantage. It was about being human. The old commander walked back to the window. That was when I began to understand that I was not watching a military operation. I was watching something else entirely. What were you watching? Zeftai turned back to face the cadets. His large black eyes reflected the lights in the room. I was watching humans be themselves. He pressed the controls again and the display showed the deepest levels of the processing station. The prisoners from New Perth were found here in the maximum security section. 57 humans, including children and elderly people. Were they harmed? Some were injured, Zeftai said quietly. But they were alive. When the human soldiers found them, something happened that I still do not fully understand. What happened? The prisoners were not afraid, Zeftai said. They had been captured by slavers, held in terrible conditions for days, and suddenly armed soldiers were breaking into their prison. But when they saw that the soldiers were human, they started crying. Crying from fear? No, Zeftai said. Crying from relief. They knew they were safe. The room was quiet as the cadets tried to understand this. One of the prisoners was a small human child, Zeftai continued. She could not have been more than 6 years old by human standards. When she saw the soldiers, she ran to one of them and hugged his leg. Zeftai's voice became softer. The soldier knelt down and picked her up. Zeftai stopped speaking and walked to the far corner of the room. His forearms wrapped around himself as if he was cold. The cadets could see that his hands were shaking more now. "Commander?" Scylla asked softly. "Are you all right?" Zeftai did not answer immediately. He stood facing the wall, his broad shoulders moving up and down as he breathed heavily. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The rescue of the prisoners was successful," he said. "All 57 humans from New Perth were recovered alive. The human assault teams extracted them from the processing station and transported them to medical ships." "That sounds like a good outcome," said Kren carefully. "Yes," Zeftai agreed. "It was a good outcome. But the cost." He turned around slowly to face the cadets. His large black eyes looked different now. They seemed to be seeing something far away and terrible. 38 human soldiers died in that assault, Zeftai said. 112 more were wounded. The humans paid a price of 1 soldier killed or wounded for every prisoner rescued. Drak made his grinding sound. That is a very high casualty rate. Any other species would have considered the mission a failure, Zeftai continued. Losing that many trained soldiers to save civilians is not considered acceptable by military standards. But the humans succeeded, pointed out Yura. Yes, they succeeded, Zeftai said. And that success changed everything that happened next. He returned to the tactical display and showed the positions of all 17 processing stations. The assault on Station 7 was just one part of the overall operation. Similar battles were happening at 16 other locations throughout Drakmari space. Were the other assaults successful too? All of them, Zeftai replied. Every single human prisoner was recovered. But the total cost was enormous. Over 400 human soldiers died. More than 1,000 were wounded. The cadets sat in shocked silence. These were devastating losses for any military force. I expected Admiral Chen to order a withdrawal after the casualties became clear, Zeftai continued. Any rational commander would have declared the mission complete and taken their survivors home. What did she do instead? Zeftai pressed a control and the display changed to show the entire Drakmari system. She ordered a systematic attack on every Drakmari military installation, slaving operation, and command center in their territory. But why? Asked Scylla. They had already rescued their people. I asked Admiral Chen the same question, Zeftai said. I told her that the mission was complete and further fighting would only cause more casualties. He walked closer to the cadets. Admiral Chen looked at me with those strange human eyes and said something that I have never forgotten. She said, Commander Zeftai, we did not come here just to rescue 57 people. We came here to make sure this never happens to anyone again. The room was completely quiet except for the humming of the air systems. That was when I realized that the rescue mission was not the end of the human operation. Zeftai continued. It was just the beginning. He activated a timeline showing the next phase of the battle. Over the following week, human forces systematically dismantled the entire Drakmari slaving network. Every facility was captured or destroyed. Every slaving ship was disabled or eliminated. What happened to the Drakmari people? Asked Yura. The humans gave them a choice, Zeftai replied. Any Drakmari who surrendered and provided information about slaving operations was treated as a prisoner of war. Any Drakmari who continued to fight was eliminated, and those who surrendered? They were processed according to human military law, Zeftai said. Those who had committed crimes against prisoners were tried and punished. Those who had only followed orders were released after the war ended. Drak made a confused rumbling. The humans had laws about how to treat enemies? Extensive laws, Zeftai confirmed. Rules about prisoners, civilians, medical care, even proper burial of the dead. The humans followed these rules even when fighting an enemy that had no such restrictions. He paused and looked at each cadet. This was what confused me the most. The Drakmari had enslaved thousands of people from dozens of species. They had committed terrible crimes across the galaxy. But the humans still treated them according to civilized standards. Why would they do that? Asked Kren. Because, Zeftai said slowly, humans believe that how you fight a war is as important as why you fight it. The old commander moved back to the window. Outside, stars filled the darkness of space. Many of those stars now had planets under Federation protection. The destruction of the Drakmari slaving network took 3 weeks, Zeftai continued. When it was complete, Admiral Chen sent a message to the Galactic Federation Council. What did the message say? She informed the Council that human forces had eliminated a threat to galactic peace and security, Zeftai replied. She also said that humans were prepared to take similar action against any other species that engaged in slavery or other crimes against sentient beings. Sela shifted in her seat. That sounds like a threat to the entire galaxy. Many council members saw it that way, Zeftai agreed. Emergency sessions were called. Some species wanted to declare war on humanity immediately. What stopped them? Zeftai turned back to face the cadets. I stopped them. The young beings looked surprised. You, Commander? I was the only independent observer who had witnessed the entire human operation, Zeftai explained. The council demanded a full report on human military capabilities. He sat down heavily in his chair. I told them the truth. I said that humans were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Because of their weapons? No, Zeftai said. Because of their principles. The cadets looked confused again. Most species fight for territory, resources, or survival, Zeftai continued. These are rational reasons that can be negotiated or compromised. But humans fight for ideas. What kind of ideas? Justice, Zeftai said. Freedom. Protection of the innocent. These are not things that humans will negotiate about or compromise on. He stood up and began pacing around the room. I told the council that any species that tried to fight humans would face an enemy that could not be defeated through conventional means. Why not? Because humans do not fight until they win, Zeftai explained. They fight until the problem is solved. Yira made her clicking sound. What is the difference? Winning means defeating your immediate enemy, Zeftai said. Solving the problem means making sure the threat never returns. He stopped pacing and looked directly at the cadets. The Drakmari had been enslaving people for thousands of years. Dozens of species had fought them and won individual battles. But none of those species solved the problem. The humans solved it. Completely, Zeftai confirmed. The Drakmari slaving network was eliminated so thoroughly that it has never reformed. Every facility was destroyed. Every ship was captured or eliminated. Every leader was captured or killed, Drak rumbled thoughtfully. That is very efficient. Efficient, Zeftai repeated. Yes, that is a good word for it. Humans are extremely efficient at solving problems. He returned to his chair but did not sit down. Instead, he gripped the back of it with all 4 hands. After I gave my report to the council, several species demanded that humans be classified as a threat to galactic security. Zeftai continued. They wanted trade restrictions, military limitations, even quarantine of human space. What did you recommend? Zeftai was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. I recommended that the council do everything possible to make sure humans never became angry with the Federation. Why? Because, Zeftai said, after watching what humans did to the Drakmari, I realized something terrifying. The room was so quiet that the cadets could hear their own heartbeats. The humans had been holding back, Zeftai whispered. Everything I witnessed, the rescue operation, the systematic destruction of the slaving network, the complete elimination of the Drakmari threat. All of that was humans being restrained. Restrained? Asked Scylla in a small voice. They followed their rules of war, Zeftai explained. They protected civilians. They treated prisoners properly. They only used the minimum force necessary to accomplish their objectives. He looked at each cadet in turn. I realized that if humans ever decided that a threat was serious enough to justify removing those restrictions, there would be no force in the galaxy capable of stopping them. The old commander finally sat down. His forearms rested on the table, still shaking slightly. That was 50 years ago, he said. Since then, humans have become valued members of the Federation. They serve on exploration missions, diplomatic teams, and peacekeeping forces throughout the galaxy. That sounds positive, said Kren hopefully. It is positive, Zeftai agreed. Humans have helped solve conflicts that had lasted for centuries. They have protected dozens of species from various threats. They have made the galaxy a safer place. Then why do you look so troubled, Commander? Asked Yira. Zeftai was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance through the void. Because, he finally said, I know what humans are capable of when someone threatens people they have sworn to protect. Zeftai stood up from his chair so suddenly that several cadets jumped. His forearms began moving in agitated patterns as he walked to the center of the room. You want to know why I am telling you this story? He asked, his voice rising. You want to know why I agreed to brief you about human military capabilities? The cadets nodded nervously. Their instructor seemed to be losing control of his emotions. Because in 6 months you will graduate from this academy, Zeftai continued. You will be assigned to serve alongside human units throughout the galaxy, and I need you to understand what that means. He stopped in front of the star map display and pressed several controls. Images began appearing on the screen, photos of human soldiers from various missions over the past 50 years. These are humans I have served with since the Drakmari incident, Zeftai said. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, who died holding a bridge so that civilian evacuees could escape during the Korean Civil War. Captain James Wilson, who spent 3 days crawling through radioactive ruins to rescue trapped miners on Kepler Station. More images appeared. Sergeant Maria Santos, who talked a suicidal terrorist out of detonating explosives in a crowded market. Commander David Park, who gave up his own evacuation seat to a wounded enemy soldier during the Titan colony disaster. The cadets watched in silence as dozens of human faces filled the screen. Every one of these, humans died protecting people they had never met before, Zeftai said. People from different species, different planets, different cultures. People who could offer them nothing in return. His voice began to crack. Do you understand what this means? Can you comprehend the implications? Scylla raised her hand tentatively. Commander, they sound like heroes. Heroes. Zeftai laughed, but it was not a happy sound. No, you do not understand. Heroes are individuals who do extraordinary things. What I am describing is not heroism. It is something much more frightening. He turned away from the display to face the cadets directly. What I am describing is an entire species that has collectively decided that the suffering of others is unacceptable. Kren shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That sounds like a good thing, Commander. Is it? Zeftai asked. Is it really? He began pacing again, his movements becoming more erratic. Let me tell you about the Vorthan rebellion 15 years ago. The Vorthans are a proud warrior species. They believe that might makes right and that the strong should rule the weak. I remember reading about that conflict, said Drock. The Vorthans enslaved 3 weaker species in their system, Zeftai continued. The Federation tried diplomatic solutions for decades. Trade sanctions, cultural exchanges, peace talks, nothing worked. He stopped pacing and gripped the edge of the table. Then the Vorthans made a mistake. They attacked a Federation medical ship that was providing aid to refugees. 18 people died, including 2 human doctors. The room became very quiet. The human response was swift, Zeftai said. They did not send armies or fleets. They sent negotiators. Negotiators? Asked Yira in surprise. 3 human diplomats arrived at the Vorthan homeworld, Zeftai explained. They requested a meeting with the Vorthan High Council to discuss the medical ship incident. What did they say? Zeftai's mandibles clicked grimly. They presented the Vorthan leaders with a choice. Option 1. Immediately release all enslaved populations and pay reparations to the families of the medical ship victims. Option 2. Face the consequences. Drock made his grinding sound. The Vorthons chose option 2? The Vorthon leaders laughed at the human diplomats, Zeftai confirmed. They said that 3 humans could not threaten an entire warrior civilization. What happened next? Zeftai returned to the display and showed a star chart of Vorthon space. The humans left peacefully. No threats, no ultimatums, no dramatic speeches. They simply said that the Vorthons had made their choice and would have to live with the consequences. He pressed a control and the star chart changed to show ship movements. 6 hours after the human diplomats departed, something began happening throughout Vorthon space. What kind of something? Accidents, Zeftai said quietly. Lots of accidents. The cadets looked confused. Computer systems began malfunctioning, Zeftai explained. Navigation errors caused ships to collide with each other. Communication networks developed mysterious glitches. Power grids experienced cascading failures. That sounds like sabotage, said Sela. The Vorthons thought so too, Zeftai agreed. They accused the Federation of launching cyber attacks against their infrastructure. But Federation investigators found no evidence of external interference. Then what was causing the problems? Zeftai was quiet for a moment. The problems were being caused by the Vorthons themselves. I do not understand. The humans had not attacked Vorthon computer systems, Zeftai explained. Instead, they had provided information to the enslaved populations about how their master's technology worked. The cadets stared at him in shock. Humans had taught the slaves how to sabotage their own chains, Zeftai continued. Maintenance workers who knew how to make power systems fail safely. Communications technicians who understood how to disrupt networks without being detected. Pilots who could cause navigation errors that would disable ships without killing crews. The slaves were fighting back, breathed Kren. Not fighting, Zeftai corrected, liberating themselves. There is a difference. He showed more data on the display. Within 2 weeks, Vorthon civilization had collapsed. Not from external attack, but from internal revolution. The enslaved populations had taken control of their own fate. What happened to the Vorthons? Those who had participated in slavery were put on trial by their former slaves, Zeftai said. Those who had opposed slavery were allowed to help rebuild their society on more equitable terms. Yura made her clicking sound of amazement. The humans solved the problem without firing a single shot. Yes, Zeftai agreed. And that is what terrifies me. The cadets looked at him in confusion. Why does that terrify you, Commander? Zeftai walked back to the window and stared out at the stars. Because it means that humans do not think like other species. When faced with a problem, they do not just react to immediate threats. They think about long-term solutions. That sounds intelligent. It is intelligent, Zeftai said. Terrifyingly intelligent. He turned back to face the cadets. Most species fight wars to achieve temporary advantages. Territory, resources, political power. These goals can be negotiated, compromised, or reversed. What do humans fight for? Humans fight to create permanent changes, Zeftai replied. They do not want to defeat their enemies. They want to eliminate the conditions that created their enemies in the first place. The old commander moved closer to the cadets. Do you understand what this means for the future of the galaxy? That humans will make the galaxy more peaceful? Suggested Sila hopefully. Maybe, Zeftai said. Or maybe they will decide that the only way to ensure permanent peace is to eliminate anyone who might threaten it. The room became very cold and quiet. I have spent 50 years serving alongside humans, Zeftai continued. I have watched them risk their lives to save strangers. I have seen them show mercy to enemies who showed them none. I have witnessed acts of compassion and sacrifice that I still cannot fully comprehend. His voice began to shake again. But I have also seen what happens when humans decide that someone or something represents a permanent threat to innocent people. What happens? Zeftai was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They solved the problem, completely, permanently, without compromise or negotiation. He walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. The Drakmari enslaved people for thousands of years. They are extinct. The Vorthons oppressed their subjects for centuries. Their government no longer exists. Every threat that humans have identified as unacceptable has been eliminated. But that is good, is it not? Asked Kren. The galaxy is safer without slavers and oppressors. Yes, Zeftai agreed. It is good. But it is also terrifying. Why? Because, Zeftai said, someday humans might decide that your species or my species or someone we care about represents an unacceptable threat to innocent people. The cadets sat in stunned silence. What would happen then? Asked Yira in a small voice. Zeftai looked at each of them in turn. I do not know. But based on what I have seen over the past 50 years, I can make an educated guess. What is your guess? That species would cease to exist? Zeftai said simply. Not through genocide or mass killing, but through transformation so complete that nothing of their original nature would remain. He stood up one final time and walked to the door. This is why I tell you this story. Not to make you fear humans, but to help you understand them. What should we do with this understanding? Asked Scylla. Zeftai paused at the door and looked back at the cadets. Make sure you never give humans a reason to view you as a problem that needs to be solved. And if we serve alongside them? Then you will be serving alongside the most dangerous and most noble beings the galaxy has ever produced, Zeftai replied. They will die to protect you without hesitation. They will sacrifice everything they have to save people they have never met. They will show mercy to enemies and compassion to strangers. That sounds wonderful. It is wonderful, Zeftai agreed.